Hi guys, welcome back to our introduction to practical Python coding in eHealth tutorial for beginners, where we learn about Python coding for digital health or health informatics use. In this tutorial, we're going to learn about functions in Python. So let's get started. So you see here I have my Jupyter notebook already running. So I'm going to create a new notebook by going to New Python 3. So that will create a new Jupyter notebook for me. I'm gonna go ahead and name this notebook functions. Press enter. Okay, so it's functions. All right, so recalling the last tutorial, we calculated the body mass index and we wrote the equation out for it. Let's rewrite this equation. So BMI equals to weight divided by height squared. All right. Okay, so let's say for this block of code, um, I do not want to run it when I don't want to run it. I only run it when I actually want to calculate the BMI of something. Here I will need to use a function because a function will only be run when it's called. So let me show you what this means actually. So in order to write a function, we say we have to define the function using def. So that define a function, calculate underscore BMI. So this is my function name. And beyond my function name, I need to put open and close brackets, round brackets. So they have to be round. So note here, I will need something called a weight and a height as variable names. So I put in weight, comma, height. And then at the very end, I put a colon. All right. So what this does is that it defines a function called calculate underscore BMI, and it has weight and height as parameters. So these are data that we pass into the function um, that the function needs in order to evaluate its output. All right, so in order for this to be inside the function, we have to indent it properly. So indentation in Python is pretty important. So define calculate BMI, I need to indent this BMI here, this piece of code using a tab. Um, okay, so calculate BMI, weight, and height. So note that the variable here, weight, will be passed in as a parameter. These are called parameters. And whenever I call the function, I'll need to give the function these values. Um, so if I call the function like this, I can't do. All right, so I need to first get out of the function by not indenting. So I just pressed two enter keys, and you see Jupyter Notebook already automatically indented for me, but I want to be outside the function. So I can say PMI equals to calculate underscore BMI, you know, again 50, comma 1.7. All right. So what this will do is it'll say calculate BMI, open and close round brackets, and these will match. So the first value will go into the first variable or parameter. The second value will go into the second parameter of the function. And so the weight will come here to be calculated with BMI. And in order to receive the BMI here, I have to return BMI from the function. So anything with the indented space, it's inside the function. I'm going to put an extra line here so that it's clear, but you don't really need that extra line because in Python, the indentation will take care of everything, or take care of organizing the code into which function. All right, so BMI equals the weight over this squared, height squared, and return BMI. So if I do this, it'll calculate the right side, which is this function, and assign it to BMI outside of the function. Okay, so let's print BMI here. I should get the result. 17.3 as my result for the BMI. All right, so note I can also do something like, for example, I calculated the function and I store it into another value variable called BMI. Um, Coincidentally, I named it the same. You don't have to name it the same inside the function. So actually, even without the variable, it'll also work, just to show you that this worked by itself. So I'm gonna copy this piece of code. If I just say print, Control V, calculate BMI for when weight equals to 50 and height equals to 1.7. I can also do that. And then I'm gonna put Shift Enter. I also get 17.3. So this BMI is independent of what was here, but it is dependent on what was returned, because what was returned gets stored as the value of this. And as a result, it gets stored as a value of this BMI. And then when you actually print it, it prints the value of this. Same here. So it'll calculate the BMI here. Whatever returns is the value of this. Okay. So, and then 17, since 17.3 was returned, I get 17.3 printed out. The other thing about function is that the code can be reused any number of times you want. So let's say, I want to calculate the BMI for two different people, say I have like a Bob, Bob's weight equals to, say, 55, and Bob underscore height goes to 1.8. All right. And then I can calculate underscore BMI, no, Bob weight and Bob height. And I'll just calculate the BMI for Bob for me. So I would press Shift Enter and get 16.97. That's the weight of the Bob. So let's say I have Alice weight equals to 56. Just came up with random numbers. Alice height equals to 1.7, for example. And then I can calculate BMI for Alice weight and Alice height. All right, Shift Enter. I get the height, the BMI for Alice. So note that in both cases, I used BMI equals to weight over height squared for both Bob and Alice. But I did not need to write BMI equals to weight over height squared for Bob and Alice separately. I only needed to have done it once. And that's what you use function for if you want to reuse a piece of code. So if you think about, functions and then like these round brackets, print is actually also a function. We're just passing in whatever we want to print into the round brackets. But this function is a reserved function. This function is a built-in function for Python. Whoever developed Python developed this print function, so we can use it here. The other thing you can do with functions is that for each parameter, you can actually explicitly define what the value of it will be. So for example, I can say something like calculate BMI. Just define weight equals to 56 and height equals to 1.7, something like this. I press Shift Enter to run it. And you can see in the previous example, we actually defined weight and height based on its order within the parameter list. So the first one will be weight and the second will be height. Here we explicitly define that weight equals to 56 and height equals to 1.7. So I can also do something like this. So if I have calculate underscore BMI, I can say height equals to 1.7 and weight equals to 56. I shift return, and you can see I get the same result. So this is particularly useful if you, for example, do not know the order, or you're just too lazy to figure out what the order to the parameters are within the function, and so you can explicitly define the parameter values this way. And if you're actually interested in health analytics, you'll see a lot of code that's actually written in this way. And that's because oftentimes a lot of the function you use, they have a very long list of parameters. And so it's very difficult to keep up with which parameter is in which slot and in what order, so that you can just define the parameter values this way. And you know for sure the parameters are getting the right values that you want. So that's one thing I wanted to tell you. And the other thing to know about functions is that there could be also optional parameters. So for example, let me just copy and paste this function and create a new function. All right, so we have a calculate BMI function. Let's just change this. Calculate BMI with adjustment, something like that. And let's say, for this function, it's already in, for example, metric units. So if you have weight in kilograms and height in meters, you actually get the BMI correctly. However, if you were to use imperial units, such as weight in pounds, or if height was in inches, then you get a different BMI that you don't want. So what we're going to do is that we're going to put an adjustment value in front of it to multiply by weight and height squared. And we're going to say in the parameter adjustment equals to 1. So what that will do is that if I call the function and pass in weight and height, but without the adjustment, the value of adjustment will take on the value of 1. Okay, if I do pass in the adjustment, say 703, which is the value if I have imperial units, then 703 will multiply by weight and then divide by height squared. So let me actually show you. So I'm going to shift enter to run this. Okay, so I want calculate BMI adjustment. Okay, so let's say that if my weight was, for example, 50, or actually let's just try that number. So 56, and height was 1.7. Okay, so I'm running this function with a adjustment by default is 1. Shift enter. I get the same value as the previous BMI calculator without the adjustment. That's because I'm only multiplying the value of whatever I got before by 1. Okay, so let's say if I have, for example, I can also do this. So calculate BMI adjustment, and then put another comma, a 1 here. So that should also give me the same result. Shift enter, you see I get the same result here. All right, so that's because I'm passing the same value as its default. All right, so if I have, for example, calculate underscore BMI adjustment, let's say if I have imperial units, so someone that weighs 120 pounds and 6 feet tall. So someone 6 feet tall would be 6 times 12 is 72 inches. And my adjustment would be 703. So in this case, I will pass in weight equals to 120 and height equals to 72, which are in imperial units, inches and pounds. So that's why I had to adjust my result by multiplying the result by 703. Okay, so if I press Shift Enter, now get the correct BMI for this person that I've entered in imperial units. Okay, so that's how you use an optional parameter in a function. And you'll typically see these optional parameters in a lot of the health analytics function that you'll use. And okay, that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching.